Hyvää huomenta ja tervetuloa tähän webinaariin Käytettyjen rakennusosien markkinapaikka Norjan malli. Aloitamme siten, että Emil Andersen Ryk Norjasta esittää meille heillä käytössään olevan uuden järjestelmän, eli kertoo tästä ombyg-tentistä. Ja tämän jälkeen jatkamme yhteiseen keskusteluun, johon osallistuvat Köpi Voutilainen Lujatalolta ja Daniela Schenk Jatkelta. Ja toki sitten Emil ja minä itse. And the same in English. Good morning and welcome, Emil. We'll start with your presentation and then we will go to the discussion. What are the ideas what we got from your model, which is used in Norway? So warmly welcome, and floor is yours.
Thank you. I will just share my presentation then. Can you now see my presentation?
Yes, it works well.
Yeah,
Go
perfect. On. Thank you. As probably introduced in Finnish, my name is Emil Andresen Rygg. I'm the CEO of a Norwegian non-profit company called Cirkulær Ressurssentral, which roughly translates into something like Circular Resource Central, which is a company working towards more reuse in Norway. We have this goal of making reuse the natural choice in the construction industry, in that we don't mean that everything should be substituted with reused materials, but that when you build a new building, you have to check if there are reused components available before you search for new ones. So that is just a shift in mindset that we want to put into the construction industry. Why we are doing this is maybe something many of you know. The construction industry produces huge amounts of waste and is responsible for large portions of the total greenhouse gas emissions. I got some numbers on that as well. The construction industry contributes to 50% of all raw material extraction, 40% of all greenhouse gas emissions, and 35% of all waste produced comes from the construction industry. And that is globally, and some other numbers from Norway is that we demolish 20,000 buildings each year. In a small country, that is quite a large number. In greenhouse gas emission, we only got 15% compared to the globally 40%. That is because we got a greener energy mix in Norway. And we only recycled 40% of the 70% requirement from the EU, which is quite a low number and is something that we really need to work with. Some of the more forward building projects got really high recycling rates, but are still many actors a bit behind on that one, especially in the smaller municipalities with lower resource, lower sorting possibilities for the materials. And why we think reuse is part of this solution, it's because it got this immediate effect. It's something that happens, you just substitute a new product with a reused product, so you get this large reduction in CO2 emission only by changing a product. Many other really good CO2 reducing things you can do with a building, like changing the window to make it more energy efficient and so on, is very good, but they'll got an effect in the long run, not in the short run. It's not that immediate effect that you can see from reuse of building components. And meanwhile, getting this reduction in greenhouse gas emission, you also avoid the extraction of new raw materials, which is really important because we got some of the materials we focus on are something that we take out too much from our nature, and it doesn't regenerate in the same speed as we take it out. So we need to think differently, and we need more recycling, and we also need more reuse to reduce the speed in how fast things get into the recycling plants. In Norway and also globally, there's a growing interest on the topic of reuse. It's much talk about reuse in different forums, but it's still much talk and not that many projects being done with the reuse mindset. In Norway, we see it's coming in with a higher and higher pace. And this July, it got a requirement from the government that you have to map all your buildings before you demolish them for reusable components, which is a really nice step toward in the right direction. But it's still only a mapping. It's nothing that says that you have to use the products that you map. So it's just a small step in the right direction. As I said, it's a large interest, but it's much talk. We have some good projects in Norway with large amounts of reuse in the buildings, up to 80%. I think some of the most forward-thinking projects got, but it's nothing for everyone yet. And we want it to be more available for also the ones wanting to maybe make 5% reuse, 10%, 20%. So we're trying to make it more available. And what we do to make it more available is to contribute with the physical infrastructure that is needed. The first picture I showed was of a large tent that we got in Oslo, where we provide intermediate storage and sale of reused materials, which I will come into more later in my presentation. We're also working with the digital infrastructure because it needs to be a lot of more data sharing between all the different actors and the different programs used in reuse projects. There are mapping systems, there are marketplaces. It's also systems made to make it more reused components more available in BIM systems. So we need all those different digital systems to talk better together. Since we lack all these right now, it's hard to make a sustainable market. But we're also working in a fast pace to make this available. So I think we're heading in the right direction in a much faster pace than we maybe would if we were would work more separately than we did some years ago. I will talk quickly about our organization because it's quite hard to get a hold of and take the risk of doing something like we are doing in Norway right now and taking the problem. So there was this one for-profit organization called Resirkel that had this. They are what is it called now? My English, I lack the word in English right now. They are a company providing reuse consultant services. And they also had a small scale warehouse where they stored reused materials that they have got a hold of through their work as consultants that they wanted to save instead of those being thrown away as waste. But they wanted to scale up this business and make it something larger and maybe put it out of their home company towards a more focused business on selling reused materials. And when they got a hold of that, Statsbygg, the governmental building owner in Norway, had this large tent from a building project they wanted to donate for good cause. They took contact with Statsbygg to see if they could be on the receiving end of this donation. But as a for-profit organization, they couldn't get this large value from a governmental company. So they reached out to Pådriv, which is or Pådriv Oslo, which is an organization working with many of the sustainability goals, both on the environment side, but also on the social side of environmental goals or sustainability goals, I mean. And they reached out to them and asked if they wanted to join in on the project as a non-profit organization. And they did this market search and saw if it was anything that the market was willing or needed this physical infrastructure for reuse. And the market search said that it was something that the market needed. It was a large need for some physical infrastructure for intermediate storage, especially because when you did this reuse mapping that is now required by law in Norway, you identified many objects that was reusable, that could be used in your next project. But very often it wasn't sync between the demolition of a building and the next building project. So you identified something valuable in your building, but you ended up handling as waste because you didn't have anywhere to put it. So it was something that was needed. And since they got that information from the market, they decided to make this non-profit company called Cirkulær Ressurssentral, which is where I work. And they were the receiver of this donation from Statsbygg, which is this physical infrastructure that we're working in today. During the early phases of this project, we had a development agreement with Resirkel, but now on a later stage, when we're operating in Oslo, we got an operation agreement with their company called Ombygg, which is also a non-profit organization, to make it possible to easier contribute economically from our company to their company during the pilot phase that we are in right now. We also needed a lot of other actors in on this project because it's It costs a lot of money to put up a tent in central Oslo. So Statsbygg was the biggest contributor here, providing both the infrastructure and also did the project of putting up the tent. Oslo Municipality through Oslo Bygg, which is the company working with all the schools and elderly homes and so on in Oslo, also contributed a lot. But we also got a lot of private actors that needs this infrastructure that also contributed with money. And we also had this strategic relationship where many of these actors are in our board of directors, as well as having this resource group with different persons in all these organizations being available to us. If we want to discuss specific topics, we can get them into a resource group meeting and talk through the topic with insight from many of the larger actors in the construction industry in Norway. So it's really, really important. We also got Gjensidige, which is an insurance company, which got another role in this whole stake or whole business as a financial actor as well. I'll talk about our physical project, Ombygg, and their services and the limitations of having a tent instead of a regular warehouse building. First, the tent itself is 4,500 square meters, as I said earlier, donated by Statsbygg. We rent or lease land from Oslo Municipality. I see I haven't translated that slide fully yet, but from Oslo Municipality. 7,000 square meters, so we got some storage outside as well. We've been open since March this year, 14th of March, so approximately half a year of operations right now. So I will try to tell you some more about our experience from that phase later on. And we're also a Future Built innovation pilot, and Future Built is this program you can go into in Norway, and especially around Oslo. There are many of the municipalities involved in this project and program, where the buildings try to be 10 or more years ahead of regular building practice. So it's different for many different aspects of the building project, but it's the environmental aspect that is the most important one. So you got these circularity criteria where it prioritize reused materials and then recycled materials and so on. And there's also criteria related to reduction of CO2 emission in the whole project and reduce the amount of added materials. Yeah. And our role in that project is to try to contribute to all their projects where they try to do more reuse. So we are not like a regular Future Built project, we're an innovation pilot. So the most important thing is for us to share knowledge about reuse and making that more available for their other projects that are more normal building projects. The operations of the physical resource central, it's a large tent that is not heated, so that puts some limitation on what we can store in our tent. Furniture, which is something many wants to be better at reusing, is not something we can store in our tent, so that has to be done by other actors. But in Norway, we have some actors doing that, so we're not that concerned. There are some large actors trying to establish them as furniture specialists, so I think that is the right way to go. We're close to housing projects, so there are neighbors close by, so we have strict noise requirements and at times where we can operate on our plot. So that is also something we have to take into consideration, putting some limitations on what we can do of material upgrading on site. So that's also something that we have to do somewhere else if you want to further develop our company to do more work on the materials that we get in. Without any shelving, we got 2,250 pallets inside and 750 outside, which is what we rent out pallet spaces when it's intermediate storage. But now we're starting to put in the shelves. We got some shelves from another company. We're trying to only get used shelves, and that's not that easy to get used shelves, so it's been taking a lot longer time than we expected. But we're trying to develop more shelving in the warehouse right now to get better use of our space. Working with an electric truck, so we don't have any real heavyweight lifting capacity. So concrete elements and steel elements has to be handled by either crane on site or somewhere else. And that is maybe what we want to do in later stage, that those really heavy elements should be maybe handled by the actors producing them instead of some external actors, because most of the time we have to send it to them either way for testing or something. So I think that is the right way to go on a later stage for those kind of elements. And we do not provide transportation. Normally the one storing at our tent comes with the materials and picks up the materials at our gates, and whereas personnel only helps with putting and loading of their transportation car. We have done some transportation, but we don't have the infrastructure to do that, so we normally have to rent a car, and then it would be just as easy to get someone else to do it. So that's what we're doing for now, but we're still working to find out if we should provide this transportation or not. We got open from 8 to 3 every day, but it's only visit by appointment for now, because we don't have the staffing to handle many customers or too many customers. We are mainly focusing on the construction industry itself, not the private market for now. Some of that is because of legal requirements. It's harder or more difficult to sell to a private person than to a company. And some of it has with our staffing. We don't get enough persons to handle that many single sale processes right now. So that will maybe be something for a later stage. So visit by appointment is we handle those that meet up without an appointment as well, but we try to get as much appointments as possible and try to sell much of the materials through our websites instead of through physical visits at the tent. That's also because we provide both this intermediate storage and sale, and it's hard for a customer to see what material this is what when they just visit our tent. So a bit about the different services. It's the intermediate storage part I've been telling you about already. Large actors rent some pallet space to just store their materials for later use in their own projects. That is maybe the one service providing most income for OnBig right now. Many of the larger actors like Stadsbygg and Oslo Bygg and OBOS, to name a few, are having large portions of the tent already for their use and have this. They even rent more space than they used to make it available for all their projects. Instead of making single agreements for each project, they have this large reservation for much more than they use right now, but they're starting to fill up as well. So that's just to make it more available for all the different projects inside the company. And we also work with the donations. Most of the materials that OnBig sell is donated from other actors without OnBig paying anything, and it's also normally delivered at our gates. It's when the donation is done, it's also change of ownership and also change of risk, and the positive sides if you get to sell the material. With risk, I mean, for some materials that we take in, we maybe have to throw some of it away. That's got a cost, and that is the risk part. So that is something we take away from the material owner, but we also take normally all of the profits. For some more valuable materials and already maybe documented materials, we can do a profit share with material owner. Right now we got some large ventilation systems that has only been used for 3 years, so it's got a lot of long lifespan still, and it should be a high value product. So those kind of products we got a profit share with the material owner as well, but that has to be a special agreement on that. And that one we have this standardized method for that as well, but it's not been in a large scale yet. And as well, not shown on this slide, is the normal sales process, a process that is normally done through the website, which is just sale of reused materials that we have gotten in from donations. I'll also tell you some about our knowledge arena. I can see that this slide hasn't been quite updated, but it's a national knowledge arena where we have these different events, 6 events each year, where we have this 2-part event where the first part is someone talking about a specific topic and being more of a presentation part. And the next part of the event is more of discussion part where there are different discussion groups on different topics, and some of them are related to our projects as well. So it's even for now we have had many different topics in our knowledge arena, everything from how insurance should be a part of this industry to the role of the architect has been a topic, and the last event we had over 400 participants when we talked about reuse mapping and the process of mapping a building for reusable components. So it's a large span between all the different things we talk about in our arena, and the projects we host there as well as are these projects funded by both our partners in the knowledge arena, but also through external funding on specific projects that our partners wants us to prioritize. Right now we have I think there are 3 projects. I'm not quite sure if I got that slide or not. Yeah, I did. I'll just go into those projects later. But the main part of the knowledge arena is to increase and share the knowledge about reuse in the construction industry in Norway. And we want everything that we produce to be available to everyone. So it's put on our sites for everyone to use, either the things that are produced in the projects and the things from our events. So those are free to join in on, and the video from the presentations are always shared afterwards. Now a bit about our knowledge projects that are ongoing. We got this application-specific product documentation, which is quite a difficult name in Norwegian as well. It's that we want to document just the necessary requirements for a specific product. Normally for a product you have to document a lot of different aspects if you want to redocumentate it, but if you got a specific use for the product in the next phase, it's maybe something that you can take out of the documentation requirements. If you're going to use a wood element for a non-bearing wall, it's different things that you have to document than if you're going to use it for a load-bearing wall. So we're trying to reduce the need for documentation without it being any risk for the material, the ones that is going to use the material. So I've done some testing with the different materials, wood being one of them, and we have some roof cladding as well. So we're trying to develop a larger spectrum of materials with this application-specific product documentation. We're also working with standardizing the calculation and reporting for reuse and reused elements. Right now it's a large span between what kind of values you get when you calculate for reuse. Normally we see a large difference at those actors that really want reuse to be part of their project. It normally gets good values, and for those not that willing to have reuse in their project, it doesn't show up as that's a high CO2 reduction. We're trying to make a standardized method, working together with many actors from the construction industry here, and trying to make this process on how we can simplify the documentation process without being, but it's still being the right numbers showing and more standardized for all companies and all projects using it. We're also working with the knowledge site, and that project has been developed further into more the digital infrastructure overall, with the project I'm going to talk a bit about later being one of them. Which is how we, as different actors connected to the reuse industry, can go together to provide the digital infrastructure that is needed. This is our partners in the knowledge arena this year. I will just skip this slide, and the next event is our Zoom. I think I'll just have to see quickly if I have another version of this presentation, because I think I lost one of my slides. I'll just quickly check if there's what's happened here. So sorry about this. I think I can just show you from here. Yeah, just give me 1 second. Sorry, guys. I was also going to talk to you. I hope you can see my presentation now. I was also going to talk to you about some of our other projects. I don't know how I managed to choose the wrong presentation, but it's also this research project that we are involved in called Sirktre, which is a large governmental funded project working towards making wood or the circular wood industry in Norway, where we are mainly focusing on value circles and how to make it possible to get reused wood out of construction sites and put it into new projects. And one of our main contributions here is the infrastructure, making it possible to both store and sell the reusable wood. And we're also working much with how we can increase the supply and demand just to have it more available when project need it. Because right now we have some actors really wanting to use reused wood, but since it's not something that anyone actually provide to the market right now, we need to work on the supply end. How do we get in the wood and how do we get it in the right lengths and so on. We've done some testing with some projects, as you can see on the pictures below, but that puts some limitation on the length when we use these waste bags as our method of getting the wood out of the projects. But in some projects they got not a lot of space, and maybe you have to put these bags through the elevator to get them down, and then it puts some limitations. So we're trying to work on how we can get the right length and how we can get all the wood at the right time right now to be able to provide it to the market. And we're also here working with test and certification, what is needed to test the wood to make it available to hit the shelves again and get out on the market in a safe way. So just some more pictures of our projects. And I also wanted to talk about this digital reuse platform that we're working on. It's funded by Oslo Municipality, this project. It's just a preliminary project where we try to map what kind of infrastructure that is needed to increase the volume of reuse today. Right now there are, as I told you earlier, many different actors providing different services to the digital infrastructure for reuse. And we want all of those programs to talk better together to get more data sharing between them, because right now it's a lot of punching between systems and it takes a lot of time, a lot of hours. And we need that to go down to be more market ready and more financial sustainable. So we're working on this project where we get all the architects and building owners and the ones going to build the constructions involved in what they need to make it more to look more like the regular process when they buy new materials, and how that infrastructure looks and how they want it to be in the next phase. And we also talk with all the developers of different digital platforms and see if we can get a more a better data sharing between the systems to provide this overall database of all the available reused materials, instead of it being you have to visit all the different platforms and all the different sites to get the whole picture. So that is what we're working on. And we hope to be in February next year, have this knowledge and decision-making basis for how this project should be further developed. This one I did present to you earlier. That's just our next meeting, which is reuse in the interior design, 17th of October. And I think that was my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Emil. We will move to the discussion first. So I'm sorry for the echo. May I ask Daniela and Kathy to join? Welcome, Daniela.
Hi, thank you.
Yes. So first, some questions to Emil. Who decided the location? Did you check the optional locations? Did you assess them? So why are you located where you are located?
It's a good question. I think it was mainly because it is Cirkel, the company having the idea, saw that this plot was available during a development phase. It was just not in use, and it was a central location, which we think is important, especially now in our pilot phase, to make it more available and make it more visible to the actors that want to use our services. And it makes it easier for me because right now we're having a lot of actors wanting to visit our resource central, and a central location is much easier for that part as well. But on a later stage, I think we don't need to be as central as we are right now, because we're really close to many projects, and that is a good part. But I think on a later stage, it maybe we can move a bit out of Oslo Central. Yeah. But we did check some other locations, but I think this was the one available and easiest to get a hand of at the moment, and close to where many of the actors were working already, both Pådriv and Resirkel.
Are you able to tell us what is the average transport distance?
What transport distance?
Yeah, so where are the products coming to Ombygg, and where are they going? What is that distance?
Right now it's a large span. We're hoping to just handle Oslo-based materials in the long run, and that our customers should also be in Oslo. But we have some customers right now all the way over in Bergen, which is on the west coast of Norway, and also someone further north in Norway. So right now we're transporting some materials longer distance, but it's mainly windows for now on, those long distance transportation, and that is also a material we actually can transport a long distance and still get a good environmental impact on. But for most of the other materials, the wood elements and other office refurbishment products, it's normally just inside of Oslo. So it's mainly 20 kilometers tops distance that the materials travel for most of our projects.
Yeah.
But I think maybe 50 kilometers should be maybe the maximum distance in the long run, and maybe having more infrastructure close by that also provide the same service. We're working together with many of the neighboring municipalities on how they should provide their own infrastructure as well.
Okay. Another question about the process, how you work. You said that you need an appointment in order to visit.
Yeah.
So do you have some kind of application, or is it a phone call? What is the system? Email?
It's normally email or phone calls for those wanting to do that, or they contact through the web shop with some kind of inquiry, and someone just show up and we handle that as well. But it's just we can't have everyone doing that because we don't have that many resources working physically on site. It's normally just the warehouse manager and one other person. So we have to, if there are many visitors, we have to maybe contribute with me or someone else working in the administration in Ombygg as well to handle that kind of visitors.
So basically the customer knows already what they want.
Yeah.
When they book the appointment.
Yeah, that is the normal process.
Yeah.
They go into the website and find the material, and then they can just come and check if that is actually of the quality that they need in their project by appointment before they pick it up. And in some cases, someone just wants to have a look around, and we also try to help them with that and making that available. But it's for now, we try to get everything through through the website first.
Okay, that's clear. Then we'll go on and discuss a bit about the amounts in the project. So Daniela, how long is an average project from planning to the use phase? How would you describe that?
Yeah, so if we kind of work backwards, average construction phase is maybe around 1.5 years. Then if you want to bring in design, it could go up to 3 years, and then from planning it's even more. So we're talking about several years.
So quite a long span. And then Köpi, how many building products are used in one project, and knowing that there are no average projects. So some figures, please.
It depends on how you calculate it. If you calculate every screw, it's got to be tens of thousands. If you calculate like the product families, like drywalls that include both the metals and the drywall and the screws, then it might be like thousands, even like few thousand. So it depends. I think it's, if you really want to calculate it, it's going to take years to calculate it. So like just from hand, I would say like about 30 to 40,000.
Huge amount.
A huge amount,
variety.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you see the role of reuse when we're thinking that we're talking about thousands or tens of thousands of products? Käpi.
Can you ask again?
Yeah. How do you see the role of reuse? If you think that there are a lot of product categories and then even the detailed products, is reuse something for every product group, or should it be defined? Or
I think it should be like the whole amount would be like my dream. I was actually thinking about if it would be possible to build your own house totally from recycled or reused materials, and I was thinking like it actually might be possible. And that said, I think it could be, but because the like building houses and schools and those are the buildings are so huge and big that you can't get everything as reused materials. I think the easiest way would be using like drywall, gypsum boards, screws, wood. Wood would be probably like the timber would be like easiest way, I think, and windows, doors, that kind of things that you can actually like take off as a whole. And I think that if you like order windows to a new building and you are like, oh my gosh, these are too big or too small, they don't fit, and then they're like waste. I think I don't think that happens a lot. I don't think there would be like new windows to reuse very much, but they can also be maintained very well in the old buildings and then like taken off, and then you can sell them again and be reused.
Daniela, how about the location and opening times and the appointment system? How do you see it from a perspective of, we're not talking about small houses or summer cottages when we think big? How would that work?
Yeah, so I think the location definitely plays an important role in the success of a project like that. It needs to be accessible enough, but as Emil already opened about it being close to residential areas, the kind of restrictions that puts on noise levels and what you can do with the site. So I think accessibility is definitely something that needs to be considered when deciding where to put the location. Probably also preferably not in the middle of town, so you don't have to have tons of trucks going through all the traffic with the transportation, so that it makes sense logistically, but is still accessible for people to pick things up, and also that it doesn't restrict your activities too much. And then, of course, it needs to have enough space. So if it can be upscaled more, then there needs to be enough space to store all the construction materials, because there are a lot of materials, as we just discussed, in building projects. So I think there's definitely potential. With respect to the opening times, then again, I think the current model makes sense because it is mainly business to business. So it being open during business hours makes sense. But if at some point it were to be expanded to include private customers, or if that would be something here, then I think it would be worth considering trying to extend the opening hours to evenings or weekends as well. But otherwise, I think having the hours during business hours makes complete sense. And then you also asked about the appointment system, and again, with the scale that it is and the resources that are available at the moment, I mean, I don't know how many appointments you get per day or per week.
It differs very. This week has been very hectic, so I've have been over 300 visitors at the Resource Central this week. Some of them being customers and some of them just being students or someone interested in the project. But it's many people visiting the Resource Central each week. So that's why we also want this booking system or something to just make it more manageable with all the different visitors, and try to get the customers to contact the ones working more physically on the Resource Central, and maybe all the other actors contacting me or someone else in the administration working more strategically.
Yeah.
So Emil, has it been difficult to get donations? Or
It's been going up and down. In the start of the project, we got some donations, and then it was a large. It got really slow close to the summer, with not that many donations coming in. But after the summer, it has been really high volume. So now there are someone contacting us each day with some new products they want to donate, and we just have to handle all the logistic parts to make it more a better system for it to handle all the different materials that they want to donate. Because sometimes we have to say no now because we don't have the capacity to handle it. So it's starting to scale up good this autumn.
So who is donating? Is the decision done at the company level or at the construction site level?
It depends. Someone like Oslo Municipality's Oslo Bygg has done it at a company level, that they want all their materials that are not going to be used in a project to be donated if they don't have a specific need to store it themselves. So that's a company level decision. But yesterday I got contacted by a university project. So they are just going to do some refurbishment of outside roof garden, I think, and they want to donate all the materials that they are removing from that project. That is on a project level. So it depends, but it's for the larger actors that are already involved in the project with the true strategic partnership. It's normally a company level decision, but many of the other actors contacting us, it's more project based.
Okay, Daniela and Köpi, how do you think? Which one would work?
I think a company decision would be best, but there could be like, I think it should be like both. That if there is some kind of project or site that has like old buildings that have historic value, or they have like this very old timber that can be used in other old construction sites where they are like renovating stuff, so they need the old timber because the new one lives differently than the old one. So I think it should be both.
And Daniela?
Yeah, I think it would definitely make sense to coordinate it on a company level, so that you can also see if you have within the company like another project starting where you can use some of the materials and donate the rest. But I think also if, for example, some project delivery method where there's a client or a customer or other parties very heavily involved, if for some reason they should have objections to donating, then it might restrict a project from having that autonomy. But I definitely think that it would be good to coordinate on a company level. And I also don't know, is it usually the like clients or the developers who make the decision, or have contractors made that kind of decision?
On project-based donation, it's normally the contractor, or it could be the contractor. But on the more company-based decision, it's normally the building owners and developers that makes the decision to have this as part of their regular handling process to contact us with all their materials that they don't need anymore, or they want to store for intermediate storage as well.
If we then move to the other question, which is really interesting in the point of reuse, we know that the amount of products is limited. So would it be okay to use several different products in the same project, meaning that the cupboards will not be the same in all flats, or the flooring materials would vary? Any feedback? Do you have some experience on that, Emil? And then what are the ideas of Köpi and Daniela?
This is something we work really hard to make as a regular practice, that you can have different products in one project, because it's just something that we've been used to, that everything should look the same. And we're working with architects to maybe implement this new method of projecting the buildings or drawing out the buildings that also makes it more flexible for different products in different flooring, for example. If you have different toilets in first, second, and third floor, no one would really notice, except for maybe the ones cleaning. And as long as it's still within the limitations or the requirements of their of the cleaning personnel, I think it shouldn't be a problem if there's two different producers of the toilets in first floor and second floor, for example. So we're trying to work a bit more with the mindsets and the architects on how they can draw out the buildings and don't be that strict on product specifications, to make it more flexible during the building phase on what you actually get a hold of. And sometimes you can get a large amount of the same product as reused as well. But I think we need to be more flexible in using different flooring in the different zones of a building to make it more to really scale up, because it's not normal to find thousands of square meters of the same flooring available as reused, but it would be maybe possible to get many large portions that it's enough to cover each room. So I think we need to think differently, and we're working with architects to kind of get that mindset into developers as well.
Yeah, and it's not only reuse, it's also the donation materials.
Yeah,
probably the flooring materials are not really reused ones, they are the surplus.
It could be reused flooring as well, because we're working with insurance companies, and they normally, when they get a water damaged floor, it's only maybe 10 or 5% of the floor that is actually water damaged. So we're working to find a better material flow for all that, actually still a good quality flooring that they normally take out of a building and throw away. Because if there's a large building and there's damage to the floor and water damage, the insurance company normally have to change out all the flooring because it doesn't fit with something they get a hold of in today's market. So they normally have to throw away everything. So we're trying to work how we can get those materials into a new resource flow right now. So take out the flooring that is still not damaged by the water and sell that as a product. And that is actually used flooring that we can sell again, that is still high quality. And maybe higher quality than the customers would normally have the possibility to buy, because it's cheaper than buying new flooring for now.
Yeah, okay, interesting. So Daniela and Köpi, how do you see this in points of the selling process, customer demands and so on?
I think it definitely can be done, and I think it would be a very positive thing. And if we think about it, the projects that we develop ourselves, sometimes we get customers on board quite early, and they're actually able to make custom choices. So we already have some variation, for example, in the flooring materials or the kitchen outfitting. So it's not unheard of to have a project where this variation is happening already, except that it's customer driven. But I think especially if there's communication about the environmental impacts of being more flexible with design choices and materials, then I think it could become a part of the selling process and something that people are more willing to accept.
Yeah, and especially if this, like about the flooring, if it's the same flooring in the whole apartment, then they can be like the next door is like light and the other one is dark and the other one is light, another one is gray, other one is white, other one is blue. So you can actually vary it as long as the one apartment is in one color, And like the toilets, that if you have 2 toilets, you have 2 toilet seats, they are the same, but in the next apartment it can be totally different. And like Daniel said, there are people in the very early state of the business, like doing the buying, and they can choose their own materials or like from the colors and choosing. And I think it definitely could work.
I must say that we have had some problems getting this into the private market with housing for now on, the reuse and acceptance of reused materials in housing projects. It's normally office refurbishment or office buildings that have been like the biggest customers of it for now. And then it's in some of the cases, the building developers have just decided that this is going to be a reuse project, and they haven't had the customers until later. And for some of the projects, that has been really working well, actually. And they got a higher price for renting than they got for a project with new materials, because the customers really want this profile of being an environmental or sustainable company. So they want to have these reused materials in their office, so they can rent out the office space for more than they do with the ones that are refurbished with new materials, which is really something exciting, because it maybe then contributes to it being more economical, sustainable to do the reuse projects that maybe cost some more in some aspects of the projects. That's an interesting thing to see, that the customers are willing to pay for the reused as well.
Okay, unfortunately time is running. We would have a lot of discussions and things to wonder, but the last question for today is that if you think your system and then we think Finland, who could be the one who could take the same kind of initiative? And knowing that in Norway, basically, Statsbygg is a bit the same than we have Senaatti. Yeah, so a governmental organization, more or less. So Köpi and Daniela, who should act?
If you ask me, I would say government, like Senaatti or something like that, because then it's direct kind of orders to start using these recycled and renewed parts on buildings and in this whole industry. Yeah.
And Daniela, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think definitely there's strength in it being a shared initiative. So having several actors on board, as Emo said about risk sharing, and I think it probably requires quite a lot to set up a project like that, having shared knowledge and resources and all of that. But I also think that if we had from some governmental side, some driving force, just like Senaatti, or I don't know if at some point maybe Motiva could be involved or something, but some driving force there would need to be behind it to get things on the road.
Okay, thank you. There is a question on the Q&A. Yeah, you may.
Our project is like one way of doing this with the different actors, but we can also see a lot of similar projects being developed around in Norway right now, with also the ones handling waste being one of the actors and that wants to take a role in this. So there are one actor in Tromsø in northern Norway that tries to take the same role. And they are a private waste management company, and they all get all the infrastructure that they need to facilitate this kind of infrastructure with the available warehouse, with the cars going out to the construction site each day, either way. So they have more of the infrastructure available to them. I think those should also be maybe considered as one of the actors in this kind of project, because they got so much of the infrastructure. The same with the ones selling new materials, new construction materials as well. They're also on construction sites each day, but drive their empty trucks back to their warehouses. So they can also be some logistic benefits of those being one of the actors in this system. Because we as an actor are just, we got no infrastructure initially, and we're just, because we're having this many companies involved in the project, we make it possible. do it, but I think it would be beneficial to have an actor with more available infrastructure, starting infrastructure than we had, to make it scale up faster and make it more easy to get the right material flows from the construction sites into the resource central. Because right now we have some limitations regarding transportation and how we can try to fit in on existing value chains. I think that would be easier if an actor like a waste management company or a company providing new building materials took a larger role. I think that would be easier because they're already on the construction site. So it's just so much easier to get a hold of all the materials that are available there every day that we can't get a hold of right now. So we see much of the good materials ending up as waste because we can't reach it in time. I think that would be easier if you were even more involved in the project with like those two actors are.
Yeah, there was a private company working with surplus products in Finland, but unfortunately that bankrupted.
Okay.
So it wasn't profitable business, but it doesn't mean that.
And they worked with the waste company.
Okay.
Yeah. But it doesn't mean that you can't retry. So let's see what happens. The questions which were raised in the chat box will be answered later, because now we need to stop this webinar. So thanks Emil and thanks Daniela and Kepi for the discussion. Vielä muutama sana suomeksi. Tämä seminaari oli järjestetty yhteistyössä rakennusteollisuuden ja KEINOn kanssa. Isot kiitokset Kimmo Koivistolle Vaasaan. So thanks for the day and let's keep discussing the topic also in the future. Kiitos ja mukavaa päivää.
Kiitos, thank you.
Kiitos.
Right, thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Tack Emil.